I'm Joyce Hornady. You might say accuracy is my business. I make bullets.
You are listening to the Hornady Podcast.
Thanks for joining us and enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Hornady Podcast. I'm your host, Seth, and I'm honored today to have a special guest on the show. Special guest is John Zent. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Seth. Appreciate it. I appreciate being here at Hornady.
Awesome. Yeah, and I say special guest because special not just to Hornady, but special to the shooting industry and certainly to the NRA Publications. You know, when you think about American Rifleman,
Right.
American Hunter, and
Right.
all those, I mean, there's a lot of us my age that grew up reading a lot of the things that you wrote, and it is an honor.
Well, yeah, I worked for NRA Publications for almost 40 years, both Rifleman and Hunter, and actually all of the various publications that came along after them. And there was quite a lot of different titles, Shooting Illustrated and Shooting Sports USA. And so, that was a great job, a dream job for
Right.
me. And I did retire a couple of years ago from it. I miss it somewhat, but I'm happy not to be hunched over a computer a lot of the time now, and
Sure.
Other things to do.
Yeah, well, and it feels like, you've been retired, but we've called you out of retirement for a couple work
Indeed.
assignments.
I've got some projects ongoing with NRA Publications, and as a matter of fact, they gave me another title of editor emeritus on American Rifleman just to coerce me to come and do some jobs for them when they have need for me, and so that's worked out pretty well for both of us, and it is fortunate that I get to meet with old friends like I did today with Steve and Jason Hornady, but also get to meet somebody new or newer to the media side of the industry like you.
Yeah, well, it's definitely an honor, and I want to talk more about the experiences you've had with Jason and Steve over the years, and it doesn't sound like 40 years was quite enough of your time for the NRA, so we'll talk about that. But before we do, anytime I have a special guest on the show, I like to rewind the clocks because a lot of us, a lot of the listeners, most of the guests on the show are just our guys. And when we're young boys, there's usually something like there's a lot of similar traits that we all had. So what was young John Zent doing growing up? Where'd you grow up, and were you immediately drawn to the outdoors?
Yeah, I grew up in right near the Mason-Dixon line, just south of it in Maryland, just south of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
And so, I got to go up to the battlefield a lot when I was a kid. That was really a neat thing, and I learned a lot about what happened there and got interested in the Civil War. But we had a family farm, and my dad would take me hunting a little bit there. But then I had a couple of uncles and older cousins who would come up to go bird hunting in the fall. And so somewhere along the line, I started to tag along with them. I was carrying a wooden gun at first, but then things would, as things progressed, they would hand me one of their shotguns, and I'd get to, have my turn, and that really is what got me hooked on both hunting and shooting. And I just, I really haven't looked back since then. As far as the hunting goes, I've really loved it. I never imagined that I would get to do as much as I did have gotten to do, and many parts of the world, and I think I would have loved it just as much if I hadn't, but it really made it even that much better for me.
Yeah, as fate would have it. You would have loved it either way, but you got to go do it all over the world. And so growing up hunting, and again, a lot of us have that shared experience where it was just what the family did, and so you have those feelings and emotions of, this is what we do, this is fun, and I love when my cousins come and we get to go do bird hunting, and that's really neat. So growing up as a young man, did you immediately try, okay, can I find a job that's in the outdoor space, or how did that go?
I actually, in high school, in our library, we would get some of the big outdoor magazines, and then my father had a trucking business, and so his drivers would bring those kinds of magazines into the break room and leave them laying around. So I was seeing the American Rifleman and eventually American Hunter Outdoor Life and some of the others, and Pennsylvania Game News was a big one in our area, and I had thoughts back then, back as far as high school, that I'd like to work on this, I was really drawn to them and started to have the thought that I would work on that. then I ended up working most of the time after I got out of high school in the trucking business, and I would still go hunting when I could, but that wasn't taking me to a career in outdoor writing or magazine production. But eventually I did get it together. I'm going to have to go to college. I came to that realization and did. And then once I got out, I was kind of obsessed with trying to get a job on one of these magazines. And
Wow.
I just started knocking on doors. And
Really?
I really didn't have the background for it as far as professional background, but I was persistent, and eventually NRA gave me a chance.
Really?
It just, it just worked out great.
Now, did you major in English?
I
or-
majored in English.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that helps.
That helped, and it certainly, I learned some things there that helped me, and just, doing that kind of coursework helped to polish up my writing skills. And when I got into working as an entry-level editor on American Rifleman was my first job at NRA.
Wow.
I had the basic writing and editing skills to be a contributor. I wasn't much, and I felt pretty useless the first few months there. And I was wondering, well, these guys are going to catch on that I don't really know what I'm doing.
I'm
here.
an imposter.
Right, but they just kept giving me more work to do, and I would hammer through it in one way or another.
The Hornady Auto Charge Pro, providing precise, customizable powder dispensing in an easy-to-use, space-saving unit. The new modernized load cell is precise to within 0.1 grain. The Auto Charge Pro offers customizable trickle speeds for various powder types, as well as custom trickle time settings. With a smaller footprint than competing brands, the Auto Charge Pro still offers a large powder capacity hopper. The Auto Charge Pro from Hornady.
So NRA, American Rifleman, got you your first job in the industry.
Yes.
Did they publish your first works, your first article?
Yeah, absolutely. The first article I wrote and had published was a gun review on the Kimber 82C, which was a 22 Hornet. It was the first wave of Kimber rifles when Kimber first started up as a gun company. They were in Oregon at that time, and they were making these really slick, semi-fancy 22 rimfire rifles, and then this was the first time they had branched out into a centerfire cartridge, and they handed me that assignment. I ran with it, and I had grown up shooting groundhogs, so it was kind of a natural thing for me to go out with a Hornet and
put it through
do that
paces.
part of it.
Very cool.
And it just progressed from there.
What year was that?
That was 1982 when I started to work for NRA.
Okay.
That article was published in the March 83 edition of American Rifleman.
How cool is that?
Yeah, very proud of that still.
Yeah. So you started off with American Rifleman and American Hunter getting some legs under it as far as the publication
Well,
goes?
American Hunter had started in 73, so they were pretty well along and humming right along. It had grown really fast. It had gotten over 1 million subscribers or members who chose that as their magazine by within 10 years of the time they started it up. Interestingly enough, it didn't cannibalize from American Rifleman's readership because NRA was growing really fast at the time. And so obviously American Hunter was filling a need of these new members who were coming in, or something that they really wanted, and it helped NRA to grow at a really critical time for it to grow. So then in 1987, I got switched over to American Hunter. They had some attrition and needed another editor, and I was interested in hunting first and foremost.
Right.
And so I got moved over, and it really clicked. And then for the next 13 years, I kind of worked my way up the ladder on American Hunter. And, we were still all in the same small building with American Riflemen and with Shooting Sports USA and some of the other ventures that NRA Publications was doing. So I contributed to American Rifleman while I was an editor on American Hunter.
Okay.
And actually vice versa. I had contributed to American Hunter while I was first there working on American Rifleman. I got to go to cover the Olympics in 1984 in Los Angeles, the shooting events.
Yeah.
And so we did a summary of that for American Hunter and in some feature articles in American Rifleman. So that was a really cool thing. I mean, I can tell you, I couldn't believe what was happening to me, and especially the opportunities that were coming my way.
A young man, passionate about the industry that he's in, and then getting to get to go on assignments like the Olympics or some of the hunts that we'll talk about.
It was unbelievable. And then the hunting came later, and the assignments were fairly sporadic at first. It would get to be a bigger and more frequent thing as I progressed. But I got to do some really neat hunts. In fact, the first, what I would call a hunt, it was a prairie dog shoot, actually. Mm-hmm. One of the industry sponsors was Steve Hornady.
Really?
No kidding, yeah. It was, and so that was...
Was that here in Nebraska?
No, it was in Montana.
Okay.
Up near Malta, Montana, which is north of Billings. And it was my first time to shoot prairie dogs. I had grown up shooting groundhogs, but this was a whole different thing, a high volume and, much longer distances than anything we had to shoot at back east, and got to use some great ammo. Of course. Actually, interestingly enough, there was some other companies who were co-sponsoring. Another ammunition company,
really?
Federal, had one of their fellows there, and so it was all in good fun. I mean, we would get done the day, and if you opened the door to the truck too fast, all the brass would spill out. So
that's burning them down.
It was high volume stuff.
And,
and it was really fun.
Yeah,
and I got to meet some people in the industry that it started something that was another thing that I really treasured about being in this line of work.
And I feel like we'll talk about it more, but everyone I meet in this industry, especially on the outdoor rider side, they have a lot of the similar things to say, which is the relationships forged between the outdoor riding community and the companies that are helping them is really what make this thing all worthwhile.
Yeah, because I've worked in this type of side of the journalism profession and none other, I don't really know how it is for those others, but in this, we're advocacy journalists. We want to encourage anyone and everyone to get out and shoot, to get out and hunt, to take advantage of these rights and opportunities that we have here in the United States, and we're lucky to have.
Right.
So, it makes it a more collegial situation. There's competition still. We at NRA Publications, we competed with the Peterson's Publishing Company and with Outdoor Life and those, and we wanted to beat them in some ways, but we were good friends with them also in some ways, and it seems to me that runs through the whole industry.
Sure, I'm sure it does. And I am on the front end of kind of establishing some of those relationships now that I work in the outdoor riding space for Hornady. Real quick, though, before we move on, where was the NRA Publications located at that time?
Well, when I first went to work, we were in downtown Washington, about 3 blocks up the street from the White House. We were right at the corner of 16th Street and Rhode Island Avenue. And so that was kind of a culture shock for me to go work in the big city.
Yeah.
I had never really had the desire to do that. And never, when I was growing up and even going through school, I had never imagined that, even though I did have an ambition to work on some of these magazines, several of which were located in New York City or Los Angeles. So there was a little bit of miscalculation on my part as far as that goes. But Washington wasn't too far from my home, and I'd been in and out of there, enough that I didn't feel, I wasn't really worried about it. I just went with it. I lived with some friends who were close by when I first went to work there before I got my own place, and I think that helped me. And it was an education.
Yeah, I'm sure. Cultural education.
I worked there in that office building for 5 years. And then NRA was growing the staff at that time, and we were running out of office space. So they had deemed that the publications division was the division that was most compartmentalized, and they could move us to another location. And this was, I think, anticipating that the whole organization would probably move at some point.
Okay.
So they farmed us out to another small office park in suburban Virginia, not far away, but far enough out of the city that it really changed my lifestyle then.
Good.
For the better.
Yeah.
I was able to get away, go fishing and hunting more of the time. The rifle ranges were closer. Going in and out of the building in Washington, I got some kind of a quasi license to handle firearms from the D.C. government, but I was warned by my coworkers, if you ever get stopped or if anybody asks you what you're doing, carrying a gun case from the parking lot into the building, if it's a policeman, he's probably not going to take that license
card.
there
Yeah.
as anything that he really needs to worry about. So,
Sure.
But nothing like that ever happened, fortunately. Good. Yeah, that was a good thing. And then we got out into Virginia, and it was no problem at all. We actually had a rifle range there, a small test range in the building, and
oh wow,
and so we were able to use that. And had a reloading shop there to use, and so that was a good scene.
Yeah,
we got
sounds
a lot
like
done there, and I grew a lot during the 7 years that I worked out there.
Sure. So the way for our listener that it generally kind of works now, and I'm sure it was the same, maybe a little bit different, I don't know, is the company, say Hornady, for example, we've got these new products. We're coming out with new products, and we want everybody to know about them. And so before we release them or right after we release them, we generally try to get events, whether they're hunts or long-range shooting schools or pistol classes or whatever, to get the influential writers a chance to get hands-on with the product and experience it so that they can give good accounts of, the performance and how things work. And so that's how it works now. And I'm guessing it's how it worked back then as well.
It is. I think that there's more of it being done since about the year 2000, I think, at companies like Hornady and others became more aggressive about working with the media in that way, and got a lot more organized about it. And so there were more opportunities to do these remote hunts and other kinds of shooting events, and it really helps a lot. If we're just sent a rifle, I mean, we can review it, we can do a workup on it and whatnot. But if we can get out and do some sort of focused activity that makes for some more descriptive way of describing how the rifle functions or how the ammunition worked for us, then it makes for a better story, and our readers benefited from it too.
And when you got readership, when you're talking in the millions, you've got that's a big readership.
Well, NRA, I was fortunate that I worked in the biggest publishing entity in the outdoors in the world, American Rifleman, around 300 or around 3 million readers, and American Hunter around 1 million readers. And then we have other magazines, or had other magazines, Shooting Illustrated, and we had a magazine called NRA Women's Outlook, which we spun off into a web site, NRA Women now, and Shooting Sports USA, and we had a junior magazine for several years, probably 30 years or so, NRA Insights, and we, when online media became a big thing, then we moved that there and rebranded it and really retooled it into NRA Family, and that's a real popular media property for NRA now. And so it we really grew, and we developed new products too as we went along, and most of them worked out pretty good.
The Hornady Rapid Safe Keypad Vault offers quick, dependable access to your firearm while providing security from unauthorized users. The Rapid Safe Keypad Vault is constructed of a heavy-duty 14-gauge steel housing and thick steel lid for tamper-proof security. The included RFID watch band tag and RFID decal can be selectively programmed to open this safe and any other Rapid Safe you own. The Rapid Safe Keypad Vault from Hornady Security.
Good. Well, and you mentioned new products. So from the company side of it, that's one of the things when we're looking at media events to get the outdoor rider, community hands-on with a new product. It's usually because of a new innovation, and you've had your hand in testing out some of those new innovations on some pretty spectacular hunts over the years and over the world. It sounds like your first media event with Steve Hornady himself shooting prairie dogs.
Right.
And, most recent, the 7mm PRC.
Yeah, that's exactly right. About a year ago, I guess, I was lucky enough to be pulled out of my retirement, taking it easy, or not so easy as really the case is, to go along on a South African safari, which, it may sound a little extravagant, but really it's a great way to do product testing
a lot of
for
animals.
hunting. Because you get a lot more opportunities to, to see exactly firsthand what's happening there. I think on that hunt, as I figured it up when I wrote an article about it, we had killed our group about 35 big game animals within the space of a week. And of course, we're all sharing the information with one another. We come back in the evening and, you catch up with everybody and talk about it. And so you can learn a lot really fast about the performance of a product, much more so than we can here.
Yeah,
not that
one
it's
or
not
two deer
valuable to do a deer hunt, to try a new product out, or an elk hunt, or a duck hunt, or whatever. But the 7PRC, it's a perfect place to try it out, and it was very impressive. You guys have hit a home run with that one. I know that you've heard that a lot. And of course, you've been hitting the series of home runs in the last 10 or 15 years. I've never seen anything quite like that.
Good. Well,
Beginning with, and I could go back further, but I'll just start with the 6.5 Creedmoor because of the phenomenon that has been. That's been the number one product introduction I've seen during my career. And I've seen some really, what I thought were great stuff, I won't name everything,
Sure.
We could be here,
But the Creedmoor, it really did.
But the Creedmoor just surprised everybody, maybe not Dennis DeMille and Dave Emery, but everybody else. I heard about it. I thought, that's pretty cool, Sounds like a little bit more than a 243 and a little bit less than a 708. And that's good. But then the first time I shot it was in a TC Icon, which is was
nice
a really
rifle.
good rifle.
Really was.
Really good rifle. And it's sort of a undervalued rifle, I think, or underappreciated in the long term. But I couldn't believe the groups I was shooting because out
of a hunting rifle.
Yeah. And it was like, I'm really not this good of a shot, even from the bench. And but for real, it was happening. So it was very impressive.
Yeah.
And then with the PRCs, I don't know the 300 as well from personal experience, but everybody who does assures me that it's right there. It's just a big brother of those. But from what I've seen of the 6.5 and the 7, that's just two more really solid winners. And hard to believe that others can do their, other cartridges will come along to supplant them, but you can never say never.
Right.
And
with the confines of brass and barrel steel and action material, and if we're going to use brass as the cartridge case, it's hard to beat the performance that you can get out of those things with factory ammo. With a spicy hand load and a Wildcat, you can probably do a little better.
So that intrigued me when you say something like that, because if not brass, is there something that you might be able to get
I don't know.
better
steel
performance from?
Steel obviously holds pressure pretty good,
yeah,
but it's not a domestic steel wouldn't be a very
but the cases wouldn't be as long-lived with steel, would they?
no, they'd be
because they're more brittle metal, and so they would crack earlier than a brass case.
I'm not sure what the industry will turn to. I mean, there's people playing around now with steel case heads and polymer cases.
With polymers.
And with that, before this digresses, but you have to consider that the action and the barrel are still made of the same material.
Right.
And so you can make the case hold 120,000 pounds, but what's the yield life of, or what's the stress life where it's going to before it yields?
Interesting to think about, though.
It's been a lot of fun. And so you talked about Steve Hornady taking you on that first event.
Right.
Talked about the 7 PRC. And today you've been around the factory. You've interviewed Jason. You've interviewed Steve. And it seems like you spent a lot of time with Steve Hornady catching up. Was there some more hunts between now and then that stand out to you that you shared camp with Steve?
I actually did get to hunt with Steve a handful of times, and all really memorable hunts. We went to Argentina and did a stag hunt with muzzle loaders.
Oh, wow.
That was, I think that predated the lever evolution introduction, but we had, I was shooting a 30-30 and shot a nice big red stag with it, and it just dropped him like that. Now, it wasn't a super long shot with the 30-30. It's not going to be, but it was more than 100 yards. And, so
gotta love lever actions.
Had a good sneaking stalk on it, and and then something that was, I think, a precursor to what you're doing now with the PRCs and with the 6.5 was I went on an elk hunt with Steve around 2005 or 6, somewhere in there, to Wyoming, and he had a new cartridge for me to use, the 338 RCM, and we got there, and it was kind of set up a little different. I don't think I had ever been on a travel hunt like that where we spent a whole day at the range before we went out on the hunt itself. I never had done that, but we took the time to do that there. We were near Cody, Wyoming, and so there was a good range. Yeah. Steve had it all scoped out, and so we took the time to figure out, where's this rifle hitting at, out to various 500 ranges. Yards. Yep. Never thought that I would end up shooting it that far, but in fact, once we got to hunting and the opportunities came and the time was slipping by, we got on a good bull that was bedded down with, I don't know how many, but maybe 30 cows. I mean, it was an incredible thing, and all open country. And then, I'm sure they could see us. We had 4 guys and a camera, so 5 people all together. And I was probably 350 yards away, and cows started getting up and going straight away from us, and of course the bull did too. And I'm on him and good, but I'm not really wanting to take a Texas hard shot.
Right, not on an elk.
Not that. And I just waited, and I pretty much figured that it was not going to happen, but he did finally stop and gave me turned enough to give me a good shoulder. And the range was 507, so I knew where to hold. Whether I could make that shot or not was iffy, but I did, and dropped him just like that.
Wow.
And, I couldn't believe it.
What a relief.
Yeah, exactly right. I think everybody was, but everybody was also very impressed. And what makes that all the more remarkable was that the outfitter was kind of an early specialist in long-range hunting. And he had a rifle that was all doped in with the scope that he was importing himself. And when we first met him at his house, he was insisting that we would have to use his rifle. Well, Steve Hornady wasn't having any of that. No. He had bought this hunt and, for a purpose, and this was the purpose. And so we got that straightened out, and it all worked out great. And
that's remarkable.
That is remarkable.
I know the 300 RCM and the 338 RCM are some of Steve Hornady's personal favorite cartridges
to this
day.
And he told me that he is he just did a goat hunt not too long ago. It's incredible for a guy in his mid-70s to go goat hunting. I'm not quite that old, but getting there, and I can't really imagine that. But I'm inspired just by talking to him about it. And he used the 300 RCM on that hunt. So I was glad to hear that. And when I saw what the 338 RCM could do there, and from a short action rifle, short barreled rifle, that I just thought, this is it. This is the answer for a lot of elk hunters here, or it should be. For whatever reason, it didn't turn out to be that way.
Right.
But it should.
Yeah, those are cool cartridges, and neat to hear that perspective. Now, did you ever get to share a hunting camp with Jason?
I never actually did.
Okay.
I met him quite some years ago. He was actually working for the Redfield Optics Company in Denver at the time, and I went there to pay a call. I was fortunate in getting to meet him, and of course, I knew his dad a little bit from hunting with him, and so I was really impressed with Jason. He was obviously a super sharp guy, and I walked out of there, wondering, why isn't he working in Hornady? And today, I kind of learned the answer to that, but you're going to have to read my article in American Rifleman
to get the full
if you want
story.
to find that out.
Right.
The Hornady Security Fireproof Keypad Safe. With a heavy-duty 16-gauge steel body, extra thick 8-gauge steel door, and 4 1-inch diameter locking lugs, the fireproof safe achieves a fire rating of 30 minutes for up to 1,400 degrees Fahrenheit. Both the interior and adjustable shelf are covered in a protective carpet that offers flexible storage configurations while safeguarding valuables from damage. The Fireproof Keypad Safe from Hornady Security.
So that's neat, though, that you get the perspective of knowing Steve, sharing camp with Steve, and then also knowing Jason, and you can see, some of the similarities and also some of the differences of those two.
Well, yeah, I would say that they're both really sharp guys, and they both, obviously have a love for hunting and, a real regard for or professional pride in what they're doing now. But, what I got from talking with both of them this morning, and especially from Steve in the past, but I think Jason's the exact same way, is how much they value, this business that their father built here, not so much for, the professional opportunity it gave them and, for being able to make a good living from it, but, that they're able to operate something that so many people in their community can work there, and they can affect the lives of those people. I just kind of nudged them in that direction a little bit when I was speaking with them, and they went on at length about how much that means to them and how they feel a sense of responsibility to their workers. And it's just the best of corporate America as far as I'm concerned.
It is, and having, worked for both of those gentlemen currently, I can attest to that.
I mean, it's for the real thing, too.
It is.
It's not just something they're telling a writer who's
you can
interviewing
tell,
them.
as an employee, you can tell how they treat you and how they treat everyone in the company. And that's just been pretty neat. Now, I want to kind of wrap this all up with, it's a dream job, John. You've got, I'm not sure
really lucky.
I'm not sure if you were passionate about writing right away, or if that you were drawn to it.
I always saw myself as, I had some talent for that right from early on. When I was, maybe junior high in 4-H, I won an essay contest and got a heifer for that. And
wow!
So that was good. That was the start of my professional.
Judge, you hear that? You write a good article. You get
and a good Holstein heifer. So that was, I was proud of that.
Come running here.
And so I just figured this is something I could do since I wasn't good at baseball or football and had no interest in becoming a doctor or a politician, or is a next good thing for me to do.
And I've heard this question from a lot of folks that see, I've got some friends that are outdoor writers, or they'll ask me personally, like, "Oh, wow, how do you do that for a living?" And I really like your story that you figured it out. Okay, I could. People have to write these articles that I'm reading.
Yeah.
I could be one of those guys.
Well, you really got to go for it. I mean, you can't. It's just not going to come to you, and that's pretty much anything in life, I think. But it's possible to do that. I mean, you really should write about what you're really passionate about and what you love. And so, for me, with the hunting and shooting, I mean, I was drawn to that. And as soon as I started to experience the outdoor magazines and read some of the books that were out there, I knew that was something that I would like to do. And so I was pretty adamant with myself that this is what I was going to do. And I was just going to find out and get in there somehow. Well,
I guess you could say it kind of worked out. Yeah.
It worked out better than it, I really deserved it to. But, I gave value to my employer and
to the companies you work with.
It worked for both of us, and so that's why it went on for so long.
Yeah, and obviously you enjoyed it, and it's like I said, it's just great to hear how this is how I'm going to do it, and then you went after it with probably with some passion.
Yeah, I mean, I got laughed out of some places, and
what are you going to do? Who's laughing now?
It didn't stop me. Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. And again, I get that question: how's that a real job? How do I do that? And the reality is, you can. You just
people have to know, though, is it wasn't being a professional hunter. I didn't. Wasn't really getting paid to go hunting. Although there were a lot of days I got paid that I did go hunting.
Yeah.
But 90% of the time, my butt was in a chair or doing
keyboard.
Yeah, on the keyboard, doing editorial work. And so either you've got to really have a gift for that and a passion for that too, or it's not really going to be a good job for you. So that's kind of maybe the first thing to look at, that part of it, rather than the fortunate part of it where you get to go out and shoot and hunt a lot. And there are actually other jobs where maybe you would be doing more of that too, and like guiding or things like that. And so there's some opportunities out there. But for anybody who really does feel like, I can do this with the writing, editing is really just a sort of a jazzed up type of writing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at going to a rural school like I did, and like a lot of us did around here, I didn't know that outdoor writing was even a thing. I would read Peterson's Hunting and American Hunter, and I'd read those magazines, but it never really clicked to me that somebody have a full-time job to write this stuff.
Yeah, well, I would see the bylines in there, and then, as I became a more regular reader, I would recognize the same ones, sometimes in different magazines, but, and then I caught on to looking at the masthead where they would list out the editors' names, and, these were real people with jobs. And so it was just a job that I knew I could do if I got the opportunity, and it took a while, and I had to jump through a bunch of hoops.
And start at the bottom?
And very much at the bottom, but but it was a good place to start because I really enjoyed it. I was completely obsessed with doing it, and I enjoyed learning, how it was all done and how it all came together, and it didn't take me, though I told you at first I was worried that, I wasn't contributing enough. And
imposter syndrome.
Yeah. But it didn't take me long to get over that.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you stuck it out for the 40-plus years now.
Right.
And you're still contributing. And for all of us that grew up reading your stuff, a big heart. Well, thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for reading all of our stuff from NRA Publications. I appreciate it. I still, they gave me the title editor emeritus after I retired, so I'm still hooked in there in some kind of fashion. It's a voluntary position, but that's okay. I'm happy with it. And so we do appreciate all of our readers and encourage the rest of you guys to join NRA and become one.
Awesome, John. Well, with that, I'll leave it. Thank you very much for coming on the
welcome.
show. And
my pleasure.
Thanks for coming out here.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you enjoyed this show with guest John Zent an awesome career in the outdoor riding space for the NRA Publications. Like he just mentioned, if you haven't, join the NRA, be an advocate for the Second Amendment, the advocate for the hunter, for the shooter. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you on the next one.